And it has some significant side effects, and there are people that have done some very strange things when they're on this, and everybody is concerned about what is it doing to their brain over a lifetime. One lady today has been on it for 10 years, and Dr. Michael Aronow would like to help her get off of it, but in doing that, all he can think about is, well, we'll put you on another drug. And so nobody seems to want to address causes, which is why I invite our participants to spend some time on my website, because I really have tried to bring many webinars like this so that you will understand when I say fight for your health, you'll know what F really means. It's not just taking the vitamin D that we now know we all need, but it's also finding out which foods are interfering with our health. I mean, so many people today cannot be on gluten, and yet it's in our diet. We've become addicted to these grains. We were told the grains are great for us. So as I start to deal with the bigger problem of all the neurotoxins, we know that if I measure any person on the planet today, their bones average 1,000 times more lead than anybody had just a few, 300-400 years ago, according to Caltech, Dr. Claire Patterson. Now, if we have lead in our bones, then Harvard School of Medicine did the study and published it in JAMA that the level of lead in your bone is in equilibrium with things in your brain like your eye, and that it will help you even get cataracts. So if we look at the big picture, I always want people to understand that we're so thrilled to be able to have a useful, healthy, health-promoting product that you're not getting hooked on, that I would endorse you taking every day of your life with no downside, so you don't have to fear that you're doing something wrong by taking PM. All you're doing is enhancing the likelihood that you're going to stay healthy. But the berberine, we've already mentioned a little bit about it, and we just want to make sure that you understand that almost half of our population today have what we would call issues with their weight, and that ties right into what we call metabolic syndrome, which ties right into inflammation and glucose intolerance and high insulin. So I want everybody to hear then that this dramatic story that Dr. Weeks has just shared with us of one of his lucky clients who's lucky enough to be knowing Dr. Weeks and getting these answers from a board-certified psychiatrist who studied at Mass General and has worked around the world and is dedicated to getting these alternative answers. So I think that if we look at berberine alone, and I just repeat, everybody, it's astonishing that it can do all the things that metformin did without having to get a prescription, and there are many reasons that it's doing that. So there are, I'm sure, some other anecdotal stories you might like to share with our participants, Dr. Weeks.
Well, you know, I'm getting a lot of feedback on this product. This is while these are ancient herbs, and as you know, natural products have been around since they were first created, this particular Vemma PM product has only been on the market for 2 months, little less than 2 months, Gary. So that means that the people hearing about it today are some of the first people in America hearing about it. But we have testimonials where doctors I've given this to were really concerned about it being spiked. They said they haven't slept that well in years, and they're wondering where they're coming from China. These herbs have been spiked, as we've seen often from our Chinese friends. But what we have is the herbs which were imported to Arizona, the manufacturing plant in Arizona, were held up by the FDA for 2 weeks for thorough analysis, and there's nothing to be concerned about in terms of spiking here. And Dr. Yibing Wang, who runs the manufacturing plant, I was down there last week talking with him and doing an inspection. He samples every product, every herbal batch that comes in. So we have a superb quality control process in an excellent facility. And so I've told my doctors, I've got about 6 doctors who I'm working with who say they can't believe this stuff is for real. Well, the stuff is not spiked. It's the power of these natural herbs. And Gary, I'm loving what you're pulling out here in terms of all the specifics, because as you know, when our medical colleagues who are unfamiliar with corrective medicine and psychiatry, orthomolecular stuff, when they get a suggestion from our patients about looking into something like a natural herb, they're quick to say, well, there's no science behind that. And as you and I know, yes, all you got to do is plug in these herbs in Google or in PubMed, and there's voluminous science, hundreds and hundreds of articles. It's just that the conventional medical doctors haven't taken the time to look at that. So We have someone, one of my doctors said, I love this stuff. Easy to bed, easy to rise, no grogginess like those over-the-counter nighttime pills, no bad things like prescription drugs do to you like blackouts or memory loss or groggy, fuzzy thinking the next day. My wife loves it. She seems to be getting a lot of quality rest at this point. And here's this, Gary. No night sweats on Vemma PM. No
Wow.
night sweats. So all you have to do is think about menopausal women and how much they're suffering. My wife is wide-eyed in the morning. I'm impressed and will tell all my business partners. That's a fellow in Wisconsin. So if you can get something which addresses the core issue of sleep, corrects those imbalances, and supplants with natural nutritional products, you have a home run, because 7 out of 10 Americans will admit to their to a survey that they don't sleep well. And here's this, Gary. What we know is that 80% of patients will not ask, and their doctor will not tell them anything about sleep. 80% of the time when a patient sees a doctor in America today, nobody's talking about sleep. Whereas sleep deprivation really hits about at least 50% of the people in America. And I have to put a little aside, Gary. You and I know that many of the teenagers, in fact, many people are going to sleep within 10 minutes, or going to bed within 10 minutes of having been studying something on the computer. Now, guess what the light on the screen in the computer does to your melatonin levels? It drops it to 0. So here's a terrible trend in America today where teenagers are not getting any sleep, because whereas when you and I were kids, Gary, we read indirect light looking at the page of a book, these poor kids are studying their homework on the screen of a computer, and then within 10 minutes they want to go to sleep, but what's happened to their melatonin levels? It's practically 0. So sleep disruption is a huge problem based on technology, based on the go world, and we have a solution.
I think that's really exciting, and when we put the picture, just looking at this slide alone, it's quite interesting to see that berberine also is useful for fungal, candida, yeast, parasites, bacterial, and viral infections. Well, as I keep repeating a little bit, on my website, if you spend an hour studying F, an hour studying I, an hour studying the G for genetics, an hour studying heavy metals, you will learn that Harvard has indicated that they believe almost 100% of everybody in this country today is walking around with cytomegalic virus, and that virus is responsible for things like hypertension and some of the problems and changes in our blood vessels. So what I'm pointing out here, because most people can't understand, until you spend an hour on my website to learn about food, which foods you're allergic to, what food supplements you need, what are the infections we all face collectively, there's none of us today that don't carry one or more of these infections. That's why we have all of this inflammation. And whether it's fungal or candida or parasites, it's important to know that here we're helping the body fight back against that which is not even being diagnosed in the 7 minutes that your doctor has given to see you under mainstream medicine. So please understand that when you are working with these wonderful products that we're talking about, you are addressing the underlying causes, which is why I want to tie these slides to everybody to understand that if you're working much better and you simply take it and you love the product, fine. We will show you that there's some interesting possibilities even for a business model that we will discuss with you a little bit. But the first thing is to have you enjoy optimal health, and you will not have it without sleep. But what I'm pointing out here is that this is addressing causes, because everybody with a health problem today of virtually any sort other than a recent immediate serious accident has a multifactorial problem where there's some imbalance because the body wasn't able to handle the wheat, or the body was sensitive to the corn, or sensitive to one of the foods you're eating, or you're deficient in some of the nutrients, magnesium and D. So when you begin to understand the multifactorial nature of our impaired health, and certainly Our impaired sleep is a sign of impaired health. But what I'm pointing out here is that we're not doing what you do when you take a prescription that just overwhelms your body and does nothing to treat the underlying issues. Here, you're actually doing your body good, and the more you learn to fight for your health, and remember, that's an acronym, so you need to learn what is the F, that's food, the I is infection, the G is genetics, H is heavy metals and hormones, and T is toxins, and there's a second F besides food, it's focus, positive thinking, and positive information that we hope we're giving you today will help you be able to have a much better focus, because if your brain is clear during the day, you'll be able to process the information, because we are in an information-intensive world. Knowledge is doubling at the rate of about every 2 years in almost any subject. That puts you under stress. So yes, there's many reasons that when we lay down at night, our mind is still racing. But here we have safe ways of assisting you, and among those things, Longevity Plus, for some years, has offered something called growth hormone support. GHS is a unique product that dramatically increases the release of growth hormones, so everybody on growth hormone support will have better muscle tone if you're doing any kind of exercise. But in addition to that, growth hormone induces deeper sleep. And in addition to that, Longevity Plus loves to tell you that you should not go through life with your loved ones being told that they should tough it out, go through menopause, cold turkey, and never support their body, because the herbal remedy from Thailand called HRT, available only from Longevity Plus, has life-changing ability to help deal with menopause-related insomnia and depression and bone loss and vaginal dryness. And so across the board, you need to know that if we're going to reach our maximum intended useful lifespan, we need more of these exciting reports. Now I'm going to have Dr. Weeks tell you a little bit more of some of these other studies and maybe some more anecdotes about what he's seeing. Well, since this is such a new product, it's fun for all of you to learn, because you're kind of on the ground floor. Once you see that you can get a couple of bottles of this material, Longevity Plus will sell you 4 bottles for $10 and just put it in a shipment with some of your other supplements, or you can go to a website we will show you, and we will teach you about the business opportunity for those of you who see this changes your life. You may have a loved one or a neighbor who needs their life changed.
Well, Gary, this Corydalis, again, this is kind of the superstar amongst the constellation of great stars for this Vemma PM. And you've talked about the allergy piece, which we understand. But the cardiovascular function is what I think is interesting. And I simply want to take a different spin on this and say that since this product is considered by the FDA to be GRAS, that's generally regarded as safe, there's no contraindications of using it along with medications. And in fact, as you and I know, we treat a lot of folks with cardiovascular challenges, and one of the questions is, will this interfere with my heart medication? Well, you know, the answer here is that to the degree that this is an anti-inflammatory, and since it has some anti-arrhythmia properties, it may interfere in the happy way of having you require less medication. Now that's clearly off-label and not something that the company talks about, but when you look at the agent itself, Corydalis, it's powerful along those manners.
And then when you start to talk about inflammation, I've always been focused on a small problem that at age 85, according to the Alzheimer Research Foundation, they say 1 out of 2 people in America will be in a rest home because they will have enough dementia they will not be able to meet or care for themselves, meet their needs.